All right, it's time for that moment when Nintendo Switch January 2017 reflection. Yeah, I don't know what exactly to title this. And I've not really been planning a lot of these, but whatever. I did talk about this being something I wanted to do yesterday. And I just wanted to talk about it. So obviously, Nintendo Switch 2 Direct is happening on April 2nd. For those potentially not in the know, but like that's the main thing I've been looking forward to, especially with Nintendo, but just in general, it's just been like a thing to look forward to and be really excited about. And as I do, I overthink things and I want to have potential expectations of every kind of minute possibility, not just because it's like oh, I want to be correct, but more I don't want to be disappointed. And so if I kind of get to be pointed in like a heavily cautious but still optimistic area, um, that might be kind of around what it'll be like. It'll feel good, but also at the same time, like I just am, wanting to, like we have so little info. Like it is just nice to have things to look towards for information on kind of what might the direct be like. Now, do I believe that this presentation is reflective of the direct? Probably not. But I feel like it's at least some sort of precedent. Um, Again, this was a stage show. I watched a re-uploaded version of it. Um, that had an English dub basically over a lot of the different people working, which is pretty normal. Um, and yeah, so it seemed like it was around an hour, like it was an hour and 2 minute or something, including like a kind of introductory thing where they didn't say anything and it was just a number countdown or something. But it seemed like it was about an hour, which seems pretty reasonable. Again, the Switch One, they showed off kind of every, no, not really every main function of it, but like a lot of the core identity of the Switch One was revealed in the October teaser. And they kind of went more in depth, like pretty like in depth on the hardware itself. And I don't mean like how does it run or anything. They didn't care about that. But like, these are the Joy Cons. These are the buttons. Here's the IR camera. HD Rumble is back, but it's better. Like, and even those weren't always fully like the most explained, but they still went over everything. Switch Online was kind of discussed, but not really. It was very broad, which is a little concerning. But yeah, they didn't talk about like the Switch Online, like games or anything in that presentation. It was just like online exists, which I guess is important because Nintendo and online didn't really get along that well. And they still didn't during Switch era, but it just was like more confirmation of things and more kind of games to have online. Um, in terms of the games showed off, at least in the thing that I was seeing, Mario Kart was not shown. Maybe it was in a separate thing, but like we knew it was coming, but it just wasn't really like directly shown. There was a lot of games where the devs kind of came up and just went, "We're making a game," which is really funny, and not even like here's the like. Suda51 showed up for a Travis touchdown game where all they did was show him like the character on the screen, and they were like, "Yeah, so I've been working with indie devs and all this stuff." Like it was very the presentation itself was very I feel like I had an air of desperation, especially with the third parties. Like it felt like they were kind of nudging them to be like I'm so happy to be able to be here on the Nintendo stage, and like they really wanted Nintendo to look good, and I feel like Nintendo was pushing them to be like, hey, come on. That was like the EA guy who was like, yeah, the middle name of one of my children is Luigi. I'm like, you're pushing it. Like it was a little excessive. Um, and obviously like Skyrim was like kind of it inferred, but it was like more so announced, more directly, and like SMT5 kind of. I think they were like, oh, there's a new SMT game that's very very early in development, and then Dragon Quest and Octopath Traveler. Like there were lots of little things to be excited about, and like again, they had more of a spotlight, more specifically on Arms, and it was more specifically on Arms and 1-2 Switch, which is cool. Splatoon had a bit of a spotlight as well, but not like a ton. It was just more of like, hey, look, new main weapons, new. I mean, I guess it was to the same extent. Like they were pretty minute. They didn't go the most in detail. In fact, I think out of any of the games, it felt like the one that had the most kind of put on it was Arms, because they had like not only the trailer but also like a full gameplay round shown, and like there was a bit more on that, and like kind of the control scheme and stuff. It was very cool to rewatch that, because Arms is a game I still think is not terrible, and I still like at least enjoy it. I don't think I don't think Arms 2 will happen, but I would not be upset, and I'd probably still buy Arms 2, but I don't expect it. Um anyway, yeah, it was a lot of just um it was surprising. It was really surprising. There was a lot of more corporate talking stuff. The actual Nintendo system itself got a lot less time than I was anticipating. Yeah, it was only like 16, 15 or 16 minutes out of the hour. Like it was really not that much. Um, Breath of the Wild got a pretty large trailer at the end, with it being with the release date. Also, like the first things I remember they were showing off were like the market price, so like it being $300 and the day of release. Um, there was like the talk of the region locking. There was the talk of the like hands-on areas prior to release and stuff like that. So I feel like that will probably be reiterated in the Switch 2 Direct. I do believe that. But I don't think it'll be as well. I think it'll be in a much more kind of. I don't think it'll be as corporate of a fashion. As much as I again think they're leaning more Apple like in hardware, like a direct style thing. Again, this is not a direct. This was a presentation. We're in a direct now. So I have the feeling that it'll be a little more streamlined, and it'll be again because it's in this digital form where the recording, it will be less awkward, um versus in front of a bunch of like a large Japanese audience. It seemed like what that one was. um and like yeah, a lot of them were like really like they were like there's a new Fire Emblem, or Fire Emblem Warriors, where they just showed like the Falchion or whatever sword, and that was it. Xenoblade 2 got a proper announcement. There was like it was very weird. It was a very odd presentation to go back to. Um, because there were good announcements, but they just weren't shown that well. I guess it just wasn't. They weren't like I feel like the Nintendo Directs have just done a much better job of like showing gameplay and then talking about the game, versus just here's gameplay. That was the game anyway. Like it felt really weird. I don't know how to feel about it. In terms of other stuff, yeah, I like it just was really I don't know. Like the games, there was a lot of just kind of confirmations of things. Mario Odyssey, I mean, the big thing with Mario Odyssey was like they were like this is the first big sandbox game since 64 and Sunshine. That's a crazy thing for Nintendo to say, that they're like, yeah, this is bigger than Galaxy and 3D World, and even to like be referencing the old games. Like that's a big thing. Um I I don't know, it surprised me. Um but yeah, it felt like they were very clearly still clawing their way out of the Wii U era, and um, to some extent, a lot of the stuff for the Switch, like the IR camera and the way they had the like HD Rumble, felt very gimmicky and very like older Nintendo. I did like the whole thing that they were like the Switch incorporates all of these new innovations from the previous consoles, like its portability and the touch screen and the control sticks, and like they were like pulling it from each kind of main console. It was very fascinating that they kind of made that roundabout way work, and I thought that was really cool because it's just like, oh yeah, they did pioneer like touchscreen with the DS and like um N64 with like joysticks and like uh yeah, they were trying to do portability with the GameCube, but then tried it again with like the DS and like all the stuff. Like, is a very interesting kind of thing. Yeah, I don't know. Um, I feel like now having seen it, I am less confident because I'm like, okay, well, not really, because I'm like, okay, they did a lot of info on a console that needed a lot of info in 15 to 16 minutes. I now feel that if they do a Switch to Direct that is 40 minutes, they can probably get away with 10 to 15 minutes of hardware stuff. Now, do I think they will do that? Who knows? But I think that that feels pretty like 16 minutes around, I think it was on the Switch 1, which required a lot more kind of in-depth stuff is I mean like yeah. And again, in the direct style, I feel like they might talk a little longer, maybe a little bit, maybe a little shorter. I'm not sure. Like I don't know if it'll be exactly kind of comparable, but I do think it's really interesting. Um, yeah, I would think that's a fair thing. I obviously would like them to do more heavy spotlight on a couple games. Again, in this, they more so did it on 1-2 Switch, Arms, and Splatoon. And even that, it was not in the way that I necessarily would have hoped. Like, I wish they would have done a little bit more, but it was cool that they were there. Um, and yeah, and then obviously like Zelda confirmation, and then new 3D Mario. Like, I don't know. I think they did not a terrible job, but it definitely was pretty awkward in terms of how it'll translate. I think given there's so many things up in the air, but also that it's a direct, I feel like they will have to show at least a few games. But I also feel like I don't know. I feel like it might lean more hardware. So who knows? Again, it's the Switch 2 Direct. I am under the opinion that the console will launch between June and July. Um, and I feel like given that they do have to show at least a few games, and given that it's also not, they don't really have like new IPs to be like, because it uses brand new hardware, except for maybe mouse mode. Like I feel like they do need to really lean into um just having games, not just games because new hardware, like they did with the Switch, with because Arms and 1-2 Switch were very much so built for Switch hardware. Splatoon 2 was not. That just is a game. Breath of the Wild just is a game. All the third parties just are games. Like that's just how it was. The EA Sports thing was so funny. Um, yeah. So I just feel like, kind of from that, all that together, that it was a weird presentation, and I think it is not going to be too representative, but it was nice to just have that visual confirmation of, oh, they could show all the Nintendo Switch 1 stuff that quickly. And that there was also nothing on the UI, there was nothing on like any like these little bits. Like they didn't even show. I mean, they very briefly showed what the main menu looked like, and they didn't really explain it. It had like the old. It was so weird. It was so strange. Um. Anyway, uh, yeah, I feel like now I'm more confident that they will kind of lean into stuff with the online services, at least a bit. They will talk more in depth about like I feel like they have to do the pricing and the date in that direct. Like they just kind of have to, and they probably will do it earlier on because I feel like that was a smart thing that they did. Um, and then yeah, just leading into games after that. I feel like that is really the way to go. And they can be all Nintendo-y about it being in the direct, but it definitely won't be. Oh yeah, some of the live action stuff was really goofy. It was really weird in that presentation, and I feel like it won't be as weird and goofy, and probably just a bit more again streamlined because it's all recorded. Um, but yeah, I mean, unless it is full on live, but I don't anticipate that at all. I anticipate it'll still be like every other Nintendo Direct where they're gonna record it in advance. Um, but yeah, yeah, I am excited, but I my expectations have been a bit lowered because I didn't really remember how the 2017 Direct or presentation was, and now I'm like, okay, it really could just be even 30 minutes. I could even see that. I think it should be 40 to an hour. And if it is an hour, just like this presentation, that'd be awesome. If it really is just 15 minutes of hardware and 45 minutes of software, that's cool. Um, but again, it felt like with this, there was just a lot more of people on a stage saying we have stuff in development and not showing much of anything. And more like the hey, these are all of our friends that are helping us out. Like it felt very much so in that kind of sense. And I feel like it won't feel like that because Switch 2 has so much more third party support and indie support that's going to be on it immediately. And I also think that their first party offerings will probably be lower. It'll probably be a few games, but it would be nice if it was more. But I would like them to do like a pseudo spotlight on Mario Kart, on a new IP, and on yeah, either a Splatoon spin-off or something. Who knows? Maybe even Metroid, but I really am not sure with Metroid. I really am not sure how they're going to handle that. Anyway, you know that moment when this could have gone for 40 minutes, but I decided it won't because I don't know. I don't have enough else to talk about. Yeah.